It is episode 111 of the Strip Poker Night at the Inventory podcast. I'm still here, the main host, SPNanon, as usual. In my infinite mercy, I decided not to cut our co-host Nord and our guest and editor Solitaire, because then I realized that I don't know what I'm doing and I wouldn't be able to edit it. And sometimes it's nice to not talk and to listen to someone else talk, so I decided to keep them, but this is going to be quicker. We are cutting the budget in that regard. We're cutting the runtime budget. We have a main roster character to cover today and two test roster characters. Well, one is technically back on main. She did spend a little bit of time on test, but it was more of a full overhaul compared to some of the art updates that we talked about previously, where it was just kind of like the model was improved. This was a more complete update to character, to portrayal, to art and dialogue. And then a brand new testing roster character as well. So the full slate here to talk about what we're going to try to go pretty quick. Nord, say hi.
Hello, I'm Nord. You can now subscribe to my $5 Patreon.
What's the reward?
My continued presence and knowing that you have supported me.
Solitaire, will you contribute to Nord's Patreon?
How's paperclip sound?
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm really broke.
I'm Mister Solitaire. I've got a character that we'll be talking about later. I haven't played with any of the other characters. I'm just making stuff up that sounds right as we go along. And
as stated, you are also the loyal and ever-present editor ever
That's
since
right.
since episode 42, I think, of the podcast.
Loyal in quotation marks.
Liable to leave at any moment. Yes. Real quick, I'd like to once again shill the ongoing SPNatI general feedback poll. It was linked last episode, and it should be linked in the description here as well. As stated in that previous episode, it is a big questionnaire that we hold every year. I kind of ask you general questions about the game. You know, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Favorite characters? What are some features that you'd like to add? Maybe some like characters that you think should have more interactions, that kind of thing. Share all your thoughts. Get it all out there. Devs love to read it. And it can affect some very real change. I can attest to that. And other devs can as well. And just in general, even if you have some weird whack-ass opinions, we love just spotting those in the sea of responses and highlighting them, because it's like, man, we got a lot of players. We got some weird players. We got some cool players. But it's great to hear from people, because, you know, a lot of people play this game, but it's not the kind of thing that you discuss in polite company. So it's great to occasionally hear back. So again, check out that link. It's going to run probably until about the end of May, so we'll see when this episode goes up. But can definitely give it a little bit more time, just for this final push, at least in this episode. So yeah, go take a look, please. General feedback poll. Thank you. But our first character that we will be talking about today is someone who has joined the main roster and was a long time coming. This is Arash Commangier. I'm not quite sure how to say his name. This may have been before the era of pronunciation guides in the character editor, but he's from Fate Grand Order. I'm not sure what exact historical figure he's meant to represent, or maybe some kind of fictional character. I'm really not sure how Fate works. This is something I have not been able to broach in any meaningful capacity. But he is very long-lived. He's sort of an immortal servant with supernatural abilities. He's a soldier. He defends his kingdom, and he's an all-around pretty nice and supportive guy. And it's a good thing that he was immortal, because he was originally added to the game back in 2020. And Nord tells me that he, in fact, was one of his sponsors and sponsored him when he went up for sponsorship in April 2021. You said?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So he finally made it. He made it to the main roster. His writer came back. He got a model donated to him way back when by Zeus, who makes a lot of great models for male characters. And the writing is what needed to be finished. And Anonymous is the writer. And they kind of fucked off for a while. But they came back, and they were about to make a new character, and everyone's like, "Can you please finish your old character?" So they were like, "Fine." So here he is. They finished him. Got through all the sponsorships, finished the sponsorships, and he finally made it on the main. In 2025, it's Arash. Arash the Archer. Solitaire, what did you think of Arash? You probably haven't played with him for a while. I had not. But yeah, he made it. He made it across the finish line.
It's the year of the Zeus, baby. His other projects will be talked about in a later episode and hopefully throughout the year. Yeah, like SPNanon said, Arash was in testing and incomplete for a long time, so I'm super glad that Anonymous picked him back up and got him over the finish line. I think, yeah, he's a solid character. First off, he's hot. Zeus did a great job with the model, and I'm not sure if he did the posing as well. Most likely, since I know some of his models are difficult to work with. But art is fantastic. I think his writing is solid as well. He's a pleasant sort of guy, so he's not the type to command attention at the table, but he clearly enjoys being here, and that's definitely a vibe that I like to see. It's always nice to have people at the table that are just having a good time. In terms of some criticisms, he could do a bit better of a job explaining his lore. He'd name drop people or ideas that I assume are from Fate or Fate Grand Order without explaining to them. Like he's got a line that I put down here. Hope Hans is doing all right. I don't know who Hans is, but especially for a weird sort of setting like Fate, it would be nice for sure to have sort of some explanation of what he's talking about. I also noticed in his naked stage, he goes from hard to soft depending on the pose. I know he predates custom penis tech that a lot of guys these days use, and that's understandable, but it's still a bit weird to see. So I think for Arash, it's sort of a case where the art is elevating the dialogue rather than the other way around. But I think that the dialogue is at least solid enough that it's fine. Like, I don't think good art can save bad dialogue, but it can definitely save average, like solid dialogue. You can definitely excel by being a great looking character with average dialogue. Yeah, good to see him in the game finally, and I hope Anonymous keeps at it.
I know just enough about the broader Fate franchise to have some basic trivia on Arash. Basically, he's based on a legendary, I want to say Persian figure, where basically the idea is, in the legend, he shot an arrow that basically defined the border between two countries. In Fate's tradition of turning things up to 11, he has a ultimate ability, aka Noble Phantasm, that is called Stella, the Lone Meteor. And this is basically classified as an anti-army attack where he shoots an arrow that splits into up to 900 copies of itself and can wipe out any army. In doing so, this apparently can kill him, I think, from the sheer effort required. Anyway, that's what he shouts when he climaxes in SPNatI. He says Stella. You think it's the name of his lover or something? Nope, that's the name of his ultimate attack.
I just thought it was that scene in Seinfeld. Elaine is hopped up on pain meds, and she goes, Stella. Stella! I did think it was the name of his lover, though. So thanks for correcting that.
Yeah, it was added in 2020, sponsored in 2021, finished 2025. I actually sponsored him back when I was still a newbie here. I think it's good that Anonymous returned to finish him, get him just over that finish line. It's good to see more of Zeus's work hit the main roster, especially because I recall Zeus sharing how much of a pain it was to get Arash to this state back then. Because he had to go through multiple rounds of revisions of people being unhappy with Arash's art, and Kisake is a different beast these days. Like, if you need to give a man like better leg proportions or bigger arms and hands, you can just do that now with sliders that we've added in. But back then, like anything custom would have had to have been drawn on or painstakingly photoshopped or painstakingly moved on each individual pose. In terms of the writing, I do feel like that's the most lacking part, just because you can kind of tell that there was a bit of a multi-year lag from him getting finished. The art definitely props him up a fair bit in that way. He has a lot of lines that are very not only like gameplay coded, but like developer coded. Like, he intentionally tries to throw the game when he's in his like nude stage because he's, you know, horny. And he has a line that's like if he gets a bad hand, it says like, good, I'll be able to forfeit now. Just a bit of a clunky way of referring to the, you know, a gameplay term in that way. I would say he could maybe do with a generics pass and more targets to recent characters, although I do see that Anonymous did try to target newer characters. And by newer characters, I mean any characters added since 2021. So he's not a total time capsule of what it was like a few years ago. And I certainly don't have any problem with him being on the main roster. I just hope that Anonymous doesn't completely, you know, just leave him now to move on to something else. Like, you always hope that with a character reaching main, there's still the option of targeting them in future or seeing more out of them. I just don't think it would be anything art related at this point. But yeah, he's decent for what he is, and it's good to see an incomplete project get finished. And that's about all I have to say.
I mean, I agree with the both of you. As far as him getting across the finish line, in some regards, he did kind of limp across the finish line after all this time. Limping across like that, you know, he came out on main, but he came out to, you know, very little fanfare. He doesn't have a ton of targets. He does have some collectibles, but, you know, you wonder if he's ever going to get anything, you know, more, anything art related. Probably not. But yeah, you just you wonder a bit about his potential staying power, especially with Anonymous seeming desire to move on. I guess that makes sense after so much time. Zeus has definitely moved on. He's moved on to bigger and better things. As Solitaire hinted, this is the year of Zeus. He's going to put out a lot of stuff. He's already put out something that we're going to talk about in a future episode. But we'll get there when we get there. So yeah, Arash's lines are definitely simple compared to the art, but even the art now has some datedness. Like, for example, his tiny baby hands. That's something we all had to deal with back then. Even Maya and Jura suffer from this because we didn't have those sliders quite yet when I revamped those models. So even those have taken a hit. I did notice some improvements. I mean, it's been a long time since I played with him, but I did notice that, for example, he used to have like the Jonathan Frakes asks you things problem. He used to, like, every hand, he was just like, I'll make conversation. I'll ask random questions to the table. No one ever answered him, but he had a lot of questions that he went through. It just kind of came off like him rattling off a bunch of them. That seemed to have been fixed.
I remembered sponsoring him to try and fix that because it was the biggest issue he had at the time, where he would fire off a different question every single round, and even developers that target those types of prompts, you're not going to target all of them, because how do you respond to 30 different questions from one person?
Solitaire, maybe you can find the clip. Jonathan Frakes asking you things.
You ever been mountain biking?
I know what you're talking about.
You can share it later. Why is he always hot? I didn't understand what was going on there. He has a fan at one point. He kept talking about how he was hot. And not in like a hot guy sense, but like he just seemed to physically be hot. I don't know what was going on with that. But he was pleasant, he was polite, he was supportive. He was somewhat dull, but you know, he's a pretty standard hot guy. He doesn't need to have a personality. He can just stand there and be hot, and I think people will generally be pretty satisfied with him, especially all the fans of male characters. They are few and far between, so they kind of cling to every scrap that they get. As we learned on the feedback poll. Yeah, he's been in the game for nearly 2,000 days. It's nice to see him finally cross it. I noticed they had some fun dialogue with Miko, actually, who we'll be talking about next. Kind of fitting. I mean, she's old. They're both old characters at this point, so that is someone he would actually target. And they're even kind of, let's say, liberal interpretations of historical or mythological figures. So that worked out. Yeah. I mean, the art stuff, like his posing was a little stiff. His legs were like kind of stiff. But like even in the art process, I remember Zeus talking about how he was a nightmare to work with, and going back and doing all the ruffles in his pants and trying to pose based on that. It was just a lot to deal with back then. So I understand if this is just it. And you know, if this is just it for your character, he's still pretty good. I feel like the shading on his nose should flip, though, with his head. This isn't a hair flipping. This is a nose flipping thing now. Overall, though, Arash, pretty good. Pretty good. I'm glad he finally made it. Solid character. He has a noble phantasm. Does he have a noble orgasm?
I get it.
Do you have any final thoughts on Arash, or should we move on?
No, he's solid.
Yeah. It's good to have another dude on the main roster.
Well, I briefly brought up Miko before, and her relation, you know, the segue, together with Arash, historical figures. She got a full art and dialogue and general portrayal update. I could continue to introduce her, but you know what? I'm just going to let Solitaire do it, because there is no man better for the job.
Right, so...
Tell us the history of this project, and how she got... How did we get here?
How did we get here? Well, I guess Miko comes from the Toho Project series of games. She's the final boss of 10 Desires. And she's just always been a character that I've enjoyed. She's just a lot of fun. She's very fun to write. She's very haughty and bombastic. So originally I released her in 2018, and she got added to the game. Must have been in early 2019 at some point. And she never got an art update since 2018, even though art standards in the game have really, really risen. And also a lot of the old dialogue was, you know, very 2018-ish dialogue, and definitely deserved to be brought up to standard. So I was working on Miko and Tojiko's rework for a long time, almost since Reimu got released to the main roster, like several years back. So it's been a lot of on and off work. As it turns out, making what's effectively a dual character means twice the work, since I have to make both Miko and Tojiko, who's her ghost servant / consort, who accompanies Miko and helps her with all the stripping. And yeah, it's a complete overhaul of her model posing and her generics. So before I just start blathering on Are there any specific things you wanted to ask about?
Well, for the benefit of the audience, can you explain a little bit more about her very esoteric origins? Who she is as a character and what's going on with her and her ghost wife.
Oh, yeah.
What is it about her portrayal that you changed?
Well, so to begin with, Miko, the character from Toho, is the semi-mythological medieval Japanese Prince Shotoku, and the quote-unquote uncomplicated version of her backstory is that she secretly practiced Taoism to become immortal, but pushed Buddhism on her subjects to help her in ruling the country. And then while that was happening, she transferred to a new immortal body and then fell asleep for like 1400 years. And now she's back. And so are some of her clans, her fellow Taoist clansmen, women. So Tojiko is one of those, who's her consort, aka a wife. As for what I've changed, I improved the art and posing. As for dialogue, I just smoothed out her character and her generics. Since a lot of the generics from 2018, I was pretty inconsistent with the character on.
She didn't feel like hugely different to me. I noticed that when she loses, she no longer like tries to flee. Is I think one of the bigger changes.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of the generics were some of the first things I've written, but since I've written so many targeted lines, I've gotten a better sense of her voice that the earlier generics didn't capture.
I mean, I'm someone who's liked Miko ever since her original incarnation, so the fact that she has not changed all that is definitely a good thing in my eyes. She's still just as like confident and bombastic as ever. But before I get in too deep, unless you have anything else to say about the project, I think we can let Nord give his thoughts.
Yeah. I think a good sign of things is that I had genuinely forgotten what their old art looked like before it was posted here for us to gaze upon once again. I played it with her a fair bit before her rework, sort of partially because you were targeting a number of my characters and I wanted to get a sense of what she was like, but also because you were occasionally hyping up the resurrection. It always felt like something that was just out of reach, and then lo and behold, you finally delivered on it. And it's a really fantastic job overall. One of the, apart from like the visual update, one of the bigger changes in character design you did was making it so that Tojiko is a like known and established presence from like the very start of the game, instead of her sort of surprising Miko in one of her early strip sequences. I think that was the right call. That opens up a better dynamic between the two of them, and also enables a better dynamic with targeted banter.
Yeah,
that's right, isn't it?
Yeah. So originally Tojiko surprised her after the fact, but that also meant that, well, for one, it made her strip sequences too gimmicky and made it difficult for Miko to really converse with the rest of the roster. And also, it meant that Tojiko couldn't be as much as a presence because she could only actually appear after Miko's stage 0. I guess I kind of forgot about that. I didn't mention it earlier because I've expunged all memory of old Miko from my memory.
Nord, other thoughts?
Well, I've given you this critique before, and I'm going to hit you with it again, Solitaire. Tojiko just entirely hogs the character slot of whoever Miko is adjacent to, and I think you should keep in mind that you should like bring her in closer yeah, maybe you would have to rework some of the posing for it even, but you occasionally get things of you get funny screenshots of Tojiko motorboating Zeke von Genbu, or by contrast, Tojiko having Natsuki motorboat her because she's turned around. Something to keep in mind with dual characters. I know you're against the idea of having Miko step off to the side for some of those wider poses, but the consideration then is that you should then bring Tojiko inward instead of shifting both of them to the side.
Yeah, sorry, not to interrupt you, but I do agree with that. So that's something I'm working on right now. That, yeah, I know you've complained at some times about that. So I've started on both adjusting her, I guess, the position of her sprites, and also reposing some of her sprites so they're easier to bring in closer to Miko. Saltmine also had some criticisms of her forfeit posing that I also wanted to address. Oh, and Spnanon will be happy to learn that I've made an aura pose for Miko, even though it's not in the game yet.
Is it a Fumo?
No.
I would have accepted that.
Keep an eye out for those updates. Maybe they'll be in the game by the time you listen to this. Maybe not.
On a technical level, I vaguely remember finding out that you actually put her on a positive layer, so like she appears in front of other characters more. I get why you want to do that, but at the same time, for a dual character going as wide as they do, you might actually want to adjust per pose. Like for some of the extremely wider poses, maybe it should start layering behind other characters, especially with like Tojiko's very much off to the side.
This is something we all have extensive experience with now, isn't it? The dual characters, the full human character companion.
Oh yeah, we've all made one.
We all understand each other's pain.
Yeah. On a less technically oriented note, I think Miko and Tojiko are a lot of fun to banter with. They're not always a regular at my tables because they have a lot going on visually. They are regulars, I would say, that I play with. I think overall you've done a really good job here. Does Miko herself have a butt pose?
No.
Spinanon, can you believe this guy?
Well, he's mostly the pube guy, not the butt guy.
Mostly I don't want to have to try and deal with Miko's hair from behind. So I figure Tojiko has enough ass for both of them.
I guess it's true, huh? She never, even when they're like 69ing in midair and spinning around like a pinwheel, Miko never shows her ass. Well, that's something to work on. Are we ready to get into my thoughts? Because, spoiler, I have a lot of them.
Yep, go ahead.
I mean, this is a project that I saw the long development of for a long time. And I relate to you on many levels now and eternally. Because I get it, man. Like, you work on this for so long, nobody sees the bits and pieces of it. They just see the finished product. And, the longer it goes, the more it just feels like it's never going to happen until it finally happens. And you just, you wake up every day hoping you don't die, because if you die, then the Miko rework will never be seen by the world. I can tell you that I've always liked Miko, and her interplay with Tojiko was definitely an inspiration for, what I did with Jura and Barnett. And I have to wonder if the shoe is on the other foot at all, and did you take any inspiration from them in reworking this?
A little bit. I think even before you made the full overhaul with Jura, bringing in Barnett in, I already had sort of a basic idea behind what I wanted to do with them. But having Barnett there with Jura and seeing that you were able to make it work and how you're able to make it work definitely gave me confidence that I could make Miko and Tojiko work.
Barnett does not participate as much as Tojiko does. She doesn't take all of Jura's clothes. She doesn't strip along with Jura until the very end. But I bring this up because they are, as if I need an excuse, because they do give a very similar impression now, I think, as characters. It's probably one of the reasons I always liked Miko, is that she's very much there to put on a performance, and she's kind of horny for the other girls there as well. But it's like, it's all about me, and you're all graced by my presence. And she is accompanied by this more level-headed companion who kind of balances her out and is supportive and likes her, but also kind of undercuts her at times and being like, don't make an ass of yourself. So this is something I want to get in more as we rework their targets. I've enjoyed what we've done so far, and I hope we can develop more in the future. But Miko and Tojiko kind of feel like the 1400-year-old version of Jura and Barnett. More of an old married couple vibe. But they have a very similar dynamic, which I appreciated. So, that's just a subjective thing, but I quite like that, as I always have with Miko. She is and has always remained a very entertaining character. Very funny. My eyes were always darting to her to see what she would say, which I found so surprising back in the day, because she just seems like this really weird character from Toho, who's a female prince, and what's going on with that. But in the end of the day, if the character's funny, if the character's a good time, then they're a good time. So with all the changes, you definitely kept that intact, and I think you should be proud of yourself for that.
Thank you.
Everything else is little notes and little criticisms. On the whole, she's quite good. So for starters, she's very careful to always establish certain things about herself early on. There's lines like how she says, like, you may have heard a lot of things about me. I wasn't born in a stable. Stuff like that. She seemed to very consistently say those kinds of lines early on, which I guess makes sense, because there is a lot to swallow with her as a premise and to understand. So I get that you have to kind of put a lot out there early. Luckily, she likes talking about herself. She's kind of spacey and referencey a lot of the time. She talks about characters that I don't know a lot about. Other Toho characters, other characters in her clan, or her Buddhist rivals. Some of that's good, but some of it kind of leaves me lost at times. She always does make it entertaining, though. Other writing notes. She also conveys the relevant lore very well via targets. She does it in generics too, but I think she's a pretty good example of, like, when lore needs to be more specific, you put that in targets, and it feels very natural that way, because it's an opportunity to explain something that's like more context specific. She explained to Arash, for example, how she can hear people's desires and she can't turn it off, and that's why she wears the earmuffs. And that's something that naturally came up like that for the first time, even though she kind of commented on it later as well. So that's good. There was a lot of Tojiko. So, I guess that makes sense, because you kind of had her there from the start, and Miko was more encouraging of her presence. But yeah, like compared to how often Barnett shows up, even, it feels like Tojiko was there like every other line. So I guess you really want to play up the dual thing going on with them, right?
Yeah, it was my intention to show Tojiko and have Tojiko around and speaking more than she was previously, where she really only just showed up in the Miko's stripping poses. Right.
And she does have a lot of those appearances on the stripping lines. I wondered if it was a bit of a new toy syndrome with all these new poses you made of her, but okay, it's something you want to keep doing. Other writing notes, maybe get a little more of like the ancient Japan flavor. Maybe Miko doesn't really care about that anymore because that era's gone, but she could throw in like stuff that would be anachronistic now. So some of like the ancient attitudes towards like sex and sexuality or whatever. Like she's got a line to Jura about like the vows of chastity and the poetry recital, that kind of thing. At the same time, she's also a big pervert towards girls, which is pretty funny. Maybe you could play up like the desires, like in the dirty talk, hearing other people's desires. I think you could do a little bit more of that. She's just kind of focused on Tojiko the whole time when she was forfeiting and even when others were doing stuff. It seemed to say she was just kind of like a normal pervert when you think she could get like really into the nitty gritty with some of those lines. Oh yeah, and one last thing I wanted to mention. When they get all lovey-dovey at the very end. Very cute. Whoever they finally admit, they just shout it out loud that they love each other. That's adorable. Now, art-wise, I have a fair bit to say too. This is mostly related to like the pose variety. Obviously, a lot of the lines are unchanged, or at least have a similar thing going on compared to what they used to have. And some poses feel adapted, and some of them don't. Like a lot of the poses are like kind of poses that I remember from the old model, except they're kind of tweaked a little bit and repurposed for like a whole new line. And some of them work, and some of them don't. So I think it's worth taking another look through a lot of that, like a lot of like the strip and masturbation sequence and that kind of thing. A big offender I saw was like they talk to each other a lot, Miko and Tojiko, but they don't really look at each other a lot. Both of them just kind of stare ahead, even when they're talking to each other, which makes it kind of hard to understand what you're going for sometimes. When I was doing Jura and Barnett, I very specifically had a set of poses where they are talking to someone else, and then a set of poses where they are talking to each other, and they are looking at each other. And that helps visually communicate that a lot faster. I looked for that in Tojiko's files, but I didn't find anything like looking at Miko. It's only in like stripping poses where she does that. Which is funny because apparently she has a huge number of poses now, like 655. I don't think that's quite represented, and like sometimes it feels like there's mismatches still. And I think with that number of poses, I mean, you can always make more, but they should all fit the lines a little bit better. So you could take a look at that.
I'm not sure if that number, I think that number is just because Miko has her normal poses and then a bunch of different variations with like all those poses and then variations of those same poses with Tojiko in different attitudes.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why you're seeing so many poses.
I mean, Maya and Jura's numbers are kind of inflated for the same reason. Just slight variations on the custom poses. Here's an example of a mismatch. Like it's kind of the old line where Miko's like introducing Tojiko's big bountiful breasts, but she says it in like kind of a negative way or like a licentious way, but Tojiko is like posing all like confident, and that just looks kind of weird. Like it doesn't match. But it just seemed like a mismatch at the time. I'm curious, like, what did you reference for like the style of these two and Reimu as well? Because I mean, it's not the Zune art; it's like shitty.
No.
So I'm wondering, like, what is it? Just like your own takes or like some kind of fan work? Because I quite like them, but it doesn't really seem like any specific Toho thing that I've seen, like the faces.
Yeah, no, it's mostly my own style because Toho has like besides the Zune art that he draws, there's also like a bunch of different guest artists who draw some of the other games art or like the official manga. And there's also like 1 billion doujins. So there's not really any there's not any set Toho style that you can try to match back to. Like Vandred, obviously, that has a style, and Maya looks a certain way, and you can match that style. But that's not really the case for Toho. So I just did my own thing and did what I thought looked good.
I think it works. I think they're pretty cute.
Yeah.
Even though they're not as like chibi anymore, I think like even Miko can look surprisingly cute at times. So, I mean, whatever your process was, I think it works for both of them. And it's in the spirit, I guess, of like fans doing their own thing. And all I have left are a couple miscellaneous notes here. Let's see. She had some targets with other characters, and that means I kind of missed some of her stripping generics, which when there's a lot going on with her strip sequences, it can kind of feel a little strange and contextless sometimes. I know those are pretty old targets, but always consider trying to throw in a little bit of that generic shtick, even in targets. I know it can feel kind of repetitive, but you want to get across what you want to get across, regardless of who they're talking to. The forfeit was also, I want to say, more comedic than hot. I described them as kind of being like a pinwheel, just floating in the air and like spinning around and like fully straightened out bodies. If that's what you want to go to, I think that's fair. It just, yeah, it felt more like something to laugh at than than jerk off to necessarily. Like Dojiko was hot, but like they're just, yeah, it's just like their full bodies and the way they change poses so frenetically as well. Just they're a bit all over the place. So I mean, if that's what you want to go for, it's fine.
I do have a slight critique related to that, which is with Tojiko going upside down so frequently, you may need to invest in having a thing where her breasts are honestly splaying upwards. Unless you're just using the excuse that because she's a ghost, she can completely defy gravity.
I'd need a reference to how that would look. Tojiko's breasts are completely custom drawn. Basically anything that I can't easily make in Kisekai, I just drew myself.
I'm sure Nord has a reference.
Yeah, I might try that at some point. Possibly. If I knew what it looked like.
The last things I want to say are Tojiko's font color was a little hard to distinguish. It's kind of faint. It doesn't look that different from Miko's black. So maybe try another color.
I thought it stood out pretty well, but...
Think of the colorblind among us, okay?
I was about to say, maybe that's it.
And what's in the future now that you finally got over the hump? She's back on main and everything. Are there bonuses to come? Are there alt skins or an epilogue or collectibles? Or what do you want to do?
Well, like I said, there's some pose tweaks that that I'm working on now. Just polishing the issues with Tojiko overlapping people too much. I would like to give them like some alt costumes. I'm just not sure what would be what I would like to see from them. So that's just something I want to decide on. No current plans for any epilogues. I think once I've gotten the last little tweaks that I want to give them, I'll go back and I'm going to try and polish up Reimu a bit more to bring her more in line with the alt quality or with the art quality that I've given Miko and Tojiko. I think now she lags behind them, but that won't be as much of a rework as Miko. That's just going to be a model upgrade and maybe some posing upgrades as well.
Oh man, that's a battle you can never win.
I know.
By the time you're done with that, you're going to want to replace Miko again. I just have to keep telling myself, it's like, you know what? May and Jor, they're fucking good enough. Just move on. Do something else with your fucking life.
Reimu, though, I do actually have costume ideas for her.
That makes sense. Yeah, she probably has a number of them. Can you make player 2 Reimu? Is she blue?
Yeah, that's one of my ideas.
All right. Well, any final thoughts on the star of the show this evening, Miko? She has plenty to say about herself.
I'm very proud with how she turned out. And I guess thanks to everyone who provided feedback. Thank you to everyone whose ideas I shamelessly stole. Thanks to the coders, like Reform Copyright, who made the pose sets, and Nord, who fixed the sprite clipping.
Oh yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it?
Yep. And I hope that you continue to show deference to the Crown Prince in this coming year.
You should be proud, man. She's great. She's always been great. Did a really great job. Happy to work with her more. Happy to write more targets.
Same here.
All right, well, Arash was immortal. Toyo Satomimi no Miko is also immortal. You, the viewer, are likely not immortal. You may die, and when you die, you may go to hell. And when you go to hell, you may find our last character, a brand new character on the testing roster, Justice from Helltaker. I believe our first representative from Helltaker.
Immortal, immoral, and internal.
Apparently, maybe not the last for now, but yeah, first Helltaker rep. I mean, it kind of had its moment, and it came and went. Well, a lot of the girls from there are popular. They're basically just all archetypes, to my understanding. A lot of ideas got thrown around, but this one here, Justice, the High Prosecutor, is the first to actually make it. Nord, you contributed the model to this. Cool Cat, I guess, did the posing, and he also did the writing. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So I'll just let you get right into it with the spiel of what her deal is, who she is, what her role in the game is, and what you wanted to do with her art, at least, the model.
All right, so Justice, as we know, is blind. So Justice is in fact blind and doesn't even have any, as far as I know, doesn't even have any supernatural sense like Y'shtola or Toph. She's just straight up blind. She is described as the awesome demon, and as you mentioned, basically all of the characters in Helltaker are character archetypes. For the most part, they're all demons wearing suits, because that's what the maker of Helltaker was into, and he wanted to see more fan art of characters like that on the internet, and boy, did they get their wish. Very much an example of having to extrapolate personality from about 10 lines of canon dialogue and as much fan interpretation, fan content as you like. I know there was, I'm pretty sure it's a fan-made sequel/spin-off game that expands on Justice a fair bit that Cocat was able to draw from. And just in general, Helltaker characters are sort of a very free-form writing exercise where as long as you stick to a few core character traits, you can't really do them wrong.
What do you do in the game? What does she do in the game?
So, Helltaker is a block-pushing puzzle game. So basically you just go around pushing blocks with a limited number of possible moves. If you fail, you get killed and have to restart the puzzle. And then you go up to the demon and you're given a dialogue choice, and if you answer wrong, you get killed and have to restart the puzzle. Justice's deal is that she's very chill, very laid back. Basically, there isn't much more to say about her from source. Her design is deceptively straightforward, same with all the Helltaker characters, where there's just enough detail there that it's very difficult to capture in Kisake, that it was a bit of a genuine struggle for me to do her model, forgive the pun, justice. But in the end, after getting a lot of feedback and input into it, I think I've done a decent enough job. And then Coolcat has obviously taken this and run away with it for her dialogue and posing. I have stuff to say about her dialogue as well from, as an observer, but I'm curious to hear what Solitaire wants to say first.
Well, before we move on, I do want to. Is there anything you can share about like the model development process, or was it pretty simple? I mean, like, what did you want to get across with with the model besides the obvious? Like, she got muscles like on her arms and her abs and things.
Well, that was honestly one of the main things. In general, one of the biggest things to get across at Cool Cat's request was giving her muscles. I'm pretty sure this is from the fan-made game that gives her a 6-pack. And so I tried to get something similar to that across in her Kisake art. In general, it's a weird contrast of having to put that much detail into the body, and yet the hair is literally just a flat color. I think I did a decent enough job. It was surprisingly tricky to get the proportions right as well, because you don't want the head to be too big, but the style sort of lends itself to having slightly larger heads.
Solitaire, take it away.
So to begin with, Nord did an excellent job with the art. Van Ripper's style isn't easy to put into Kisekai. Certainly not one-to-one with the original art, but I think Nord did an excellent job of taking his style and making it work in Kisekai. Like, it's very obvious justice, and it's a very good way of interpreting that style. As for writing, I think she's got a pretty good sense of her personality, but I wouldn't mind if there was a bit more in-depth explanation of her lore. I'm already familiar with Helltaker, but I still noticed that she name-dropped like other demons without ever explaining their shtick. So I think that it would help to sort of layer in a bit more background information about, like, what is Helltaker? Who is Justice? You know, who are the other demons? What does Justice think of the other demons? And unfortunately, she really hasn't gotten a lot in terms of updates since she entered testing. And it was noticeable for me because she didn't target anyone at my table when I did a test game with her. And there's also a decent number of repeating generics, which is acceptable for a character on testing. But I also sort of would hope that she would get a little bit more lines by now. In terms of more specific criticism, first, I think that she needs to have a bit more even distribution of poses. There's like a few different poses I saw a lot of the time. I think it's her casual pose or her interested pose that I saw a lot of in my game with her. For her posing, so I noticed in her stage 0 and 1 poses, her jacket is supposed to hang off her shoulders like a cape, but in a lot of poses, her arm just sort of phases through it, and the front part of her jacket doesn't match up with her the back part of her jacket. So in her neutral pose here, you can see that on her left arm, while the front part of her jacket should be draped over her arm, her arm is basically facing through it, and it's the edge of the jacket front is not matching up with the jacket back behind her. And this is something I really noticed because I did the same thing with Miko, where I had her cape. And what I did is I used a lot of different pieces to make her cape. So I had to have like 3 or 4 different cape, like shoulder bits that I could cycle between when posing her, depending on where her arm was placed, so that her shoulder wasn't phasing through her cape. And I also made sure that the edge of the cape should always be flush either with the outside of her arm or with the cape back behind her.
Any kind of draping clothing in Kisekai, like a cape or a dress, it's always a real bitch.
Yeah, it's Kisekai doesn't like when you have stuff on the shoulders. You kind of have to do all of that as its own. Like you just have to make a bunch of different variants and do it per pose and adjust it per pose. There's no way to get around that. But I think all in all, Justice has a good base. So I hope that Cool Cat keeps at it and that we get to see more of the awesome demon in SPNatI. Nord or spnanon if you want to go.
Nord, I think you can go because you wanted to talk about the posing and the dialogue, the parts you didn't do. Go ahead.
Having revisited her under a more critical lens, now I'm more detached from having made the model in general. I think his posing the Cool Cat's done is good, but just needs a couple of fixes, as Solitaire was touching on. It's very difficult, especially in the earlier stages, to be posing with this jacket over her shoulders acting as a cape, and I think fixing that up, it might be a case where the poses themselves need to be changed to account for what's going on in those early stages. If Cool Cat wants my help with that, I'll gladly lend a hand for it. I just couldn't really have committed to doing all of the posing up front for him myself. Writing-wise, she's only got just shy of 700 lines currently, and you can kind of feel it in some areas, but I'm feeling that Cool Cat has a good grasp of the sort of energy she should be bringing to the game already, and it's just a matter of giving him time to explore that in greater detail. At the time of this recording, we've just actually done a bit of banter between some of our characters that isn't in the game yet, and it's been fun bouncing back and forth with him, with Justice. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. It's just still sort of early days for her. A couple of rough edges that can always be smoothed out with testing.
I definitely agree with the view that both of you have shared, especially regarding the writing. I said that maybe Miko establishes a little bit too much. Not really, but I kind of said that. And Justice has the opposite problem where she really just does not establish enough. I came away from my game like she was cool. I liked her, but yeah, I really did not learn a single thing about her or Helltaker or any of the demons or what her deal is, what she does all day, what's up with her being the high prosecutor or being in hell or being a demon or being blind. None of those things ever really came up. So I was left kind of lost most of the time, and I started to ignore her a little bit because, I mean, she did the one thing. She was cool and she was chill and she was having a good time, and she's a nice presence at the table, but that's all she has going on right now. Is she's cool, right? She's got the vibe down. The vibe is good, assuming it's accurate, which it seems to be. But yeah, that's kind of it right now. I noticed that she had very much like when Cool Cat needs to write like a cool or chill character, he has a certain way of writing that kind of. I saw it in Jim, and when Samus came out, I said she sounds a lot like Jim. And now that Justice is out, I'm like, she sounds a lot like Samus and Jim, because he kind of does the same thing. He drops first person pronouns a lot. She'll be like, don't suppose you're ready, or hope everything's good, stuff like that. Just a little bit of like the terse cowboy talk almost, a lot of flat punctuation. I think you can get away with some italics and dashes and ellipses and things without sounding too emotional. God knows Maya uses a lot of ellipses without any emotion. I hope. But yeah, the lack of context leaves, like, she's coy, but that whole attitude just feels kind of empty because I don't have anything to base it on when I'm listening to her. Which is a shame because I like what's there. She's cool. She almost seems like a big sister type. You know, she needs to do a little bit more with her being blind or having those muscles. She had no bra. That was a pretty funny surprise. And there was a nice bit of character when she took off her shirt and her tits are just out in the open, but the first thing she did was talk about her abs. She acted like being able to see her abs was like the real treat. So that was fun. You could do a little bit more with that.
The animations of her tossing her tie away and all are great flair.
Oh yeah, she has like fun squash and stretch on her strips. So that was good stuff. And the pose she has, impressed. That's pretty funny, or pretty entertainingly exaggerated. She's like, not fucking bad. It's a bit weird. I don't really get how she knows what's going on when she's blind. I honestly started to forget that she was blind after a while. Again, I just don't know what her deal is. Other than that, she's cool. She's chill. That's all she has. Especially with, being a demon from hell, you'd think you could really get into the dirty talk a bit more. She looks kind of oily and shiny. Maybe that's just an art thing, but you could add that in. Doing stuff with, being sinners, being evil. I think she could get into it and still be kind of chill and kind of cool. She doesn't need to crack. I often say, I want stoic characters to crack a little bit. She doesn't have to do that, but I do think it'd be nice if she kind of, maybe if she took charge, if she was a little more dominating, you can still be cool in that way, She can kind of talk about all her, like, her body and her, because she's got a hot body. You could talk about, like, her muscles and things, and how she's really going to make you beg for it, that kind of thing. You could do a little bit more with that. It's tough. It's tough being the first representative of a franchise. You kind of have to do a lot of the heavy lifting for establishing for players of the game what the franchise's deal is, and other later franchise mates can kind of piggyback off of you a little bit, I've found. I remember like Sakura from Zombieland Saga. She kind of had to do a lot with like the zombie stuff. And Saki, when she came, she just dumped a bucket of water on her head and was just fucking around. Like, yeah, I'm a zombie, whatever. On the whole, though, Justice, good, but yeah. Ironically, for a character with so much meat on her, there's just not a lot there. She feels pretty skeletal at the moment. Also, special note of shame for her masturbation posing. Not only is it kneeling, which sucks, but it's like she's using like her index finger a lot of time. That's also weird. I'm against that. That's against my religion. That's why I'm going to hell.
We all are.
Did God not create the titty? Did God not create the beautiful buttocks? These things are sins? All right, take it up with God. Did God not create heroin? Hashtag Saki. Any final thoughts on justice? Is there justice in this world?
I'd just like to see Cool Cat keep up work on justice and keep adding meat to her bones.
I was trying to think of a clever and witty pun, but I couldn't think of anything. I think she's good, has a lot of potential. Interested to see where Cool Cat takes her from here.
I do want to praise your work on the model. It's got bold outlines, very cartoony vibe, simple, sharp objects and shapes. I think you nailed it. With the obviously the titties are very nice. They look very grabbable.
Yeah.
Yeah. She conveys the feel, but not the substance yet. She seems very normal, which is strange for a blind demon. All right, well, 3 very interesting projects, and I think that's going to do it for episode 111. Thanks very much for coming on, Nord. I'm glad I didn't fire you. thanks for very much for coming on and also for later editing this podcast, Solitaire. I'm very glad that I didn't fire you.
I have to make sure I get all my thoughts about Miko out into the world. And I apologize for my very disorganized notes on Miko. I know way more about this character than any human being ought to. And so it can be difficult to figure out how to parse it down into enough information that the hosts don't murder me over it for talking too long.
That's another thing I relate to you on, knowing way too much about a character. Nord, any sign off?
Have you subscribed to my Patreon yet? Please, I need the money.